This week's parsha is Parshas Rabbi, and with these parshiyos you can feel the Yemei Nerayim coming up. Tisha B'Av is now behind us. We're now in the 7 weeks of consolation and preparing for Elul's Mon coming up as Rosh Hashanah of the week. Hard to imagine that. Once Elul begins, the Sephardi begins saying Slichos right away from Rosh Chodesh onward. The Ashkenazim, they say the David. It's into the frame of mind, the mood, the mindset for the high holidays, for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And these parshiyos, for sure, do that as well. And every year these parshas come along and you they sort of snap you into the reality that Yom Adin is coming up on Rosh Hashanah, with followed by the Seres HaShavua and Yom Kippur. And this parsha really speaks about the essence of what the din is all about. It begins by saying, Re'ei, Anoichi noisen lifnechem hayom bracha klala. Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to the Jewish people and says, I place before you, blessing and curse. It's a bracha, asher tishma'u el mitzvahs Hashem Elokechem, asher noichi mitzaveschem hayom. The bracha, of course, comes, nothing, no kedushim here, it's obvious that the bracha comes for listening to the mitzvahs of Hashem, your God, which I'm commanding you this day, says Moshe Rabbeinu, v'klala imlo sishmu'u el mitzvahs Hashem, and the klala, the curse of course comes for not listening to Kosh Baruch Hu, Hashem el mitzvahs Hashem l'kechem, the mitzvahs of God, your God, v'sartem in derech asher anoichi mitzaveschem hayom, and you stray from the path that I've commanded you to follow this day, leches achrei Elohim, leches achrei Elohim acherim, to pursue false gods, asher lo yadatem, which you have not known in the past. There's a lot of detail over here to go into exactly why the Torah is so specific in the lashon. By brocha, also by Parashas Kisava, the brocha is very specific, very short. It says you do this is what you get. By the klal, it's very specific and details and outlines specifically what the issues are. And there's what to talk about in terms of that. But the main point over here is that Moshe is placing before us a choice. That seems to be very obvious. Who is going to miss the point of what he's saying over here? Obviously, what you're supposed to choose is the brocha. I mean, what person in their right mind would choose the klala? Okay, today the people don't necessarily believe in the Kosh Baruch Hu, or if they believe in Kosh Baruch Hu, they don't believe in Torah from Sinai, or if they believe in Torah from Sinai, they don't quite understand exactly what it means in terms of everyday life. And all kinds of reasons why people rationalize and go off the derech and follow their own taiva, their own gaiva, and do their own thing, in spite of the fact that Torah specifically over here says broch and klala. But we're talking about the Jewish people by Har Sinai, with the Anei Kavod hovering around them, right? The clouds of glory, and the man falling from Shemaim, the Be'er Miriam that has been following through the desert the entire time, providing them with their water and whatever, other things that are required from the bear. And it's clear that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. It's clear the Torah is from Sinai to these people, but Moshe is laying out specifically the brach and the klala and in very, very simple terms. And it brings up the issue of something that we really take for granted tremendously. People talk about why hasn't Mashiach come as of this time? And we're seeing all the suffering, all the difficulty, the Holocaust, the Shoah. Was certainly a major black hole in the history of mankind and the Jewish people specifically. And if anyone thought that the Mashiach should come, it should be at that time in history. But he didn't come, and still at this very day that he hasn't arrived, in spite of the fact that we certainly have been living out pretty much every klala, everything the Torah says could go wrong, but the Jewish people of history has in fact gone wrong. There's nothing left to do. There's nothing left to suffer at this point in time. And why hasn't Mashiach come as of yet? And the answer is very simple, although it perhaps somewhat profound, and that is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu values free will more than we value free will. Once Mashiach comes, b'yomahu yeshem chadash ma'achad, the day that Mashiach comes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is finally revealed to all of mankind. There's no need for any seminars to prove the reality of God, to prove the validity of Torah from Sinai, because the whole world will know the truth. Evil will be gone. The Yitzhahara, says the Gemara, will be shechted, will be finished with, will be over, its job is over, and mankind will move on into the utopian period of time called Yemos HaMashiach. There'll be no free will. So, we don't care that much. Take it away. Just bring the bliss. Just bring the pleasure that's awaiting us, because enough of this free will business. Who needs it anyhow? I mean, it seems an obvious part of life. But the reality is, once Mashiach comes, once history comes to close, there's no longer any Bechira. And not just that, but we take it for granted on such a degree that people don't realize how few free will choices they actually make on a daily basis. But people are making choices all the time. They'll tell you that. I'm making choices. From the moment I wake up in the morning, do I get out of bed? Do I get out of bed now? At this time? Do I go to daven? Do I put on my tefillin, my talis? Do I do this? What do I eat? I'm making choices all day long. What do you mean that I make so few free will choices? So the answer is because free will is not what people think. Just the term itself, what does free will mean? Free, the will, we know. Will means ratzon, means what you want to do, expression of your desire. What are you free of? So for example, the Gemara brings down, talking about somebody who is supposed to divorce his wife because he's not been a good husband for whatever reason. But the halacha is that unless a man says he wants to divorce his wife, then she cannot really sue for divorce. I mean, she goes through the motions and try to get the rabbis on board and find all kinds of ways to coerce him. But the reality is it's not like the secular world. But he has to say, I want to do it. I want to give a get and get divorced. And of course, this is a reason for many of the aguna problems that have plagued Jewish history going back who knows how long, because some husband, for whatever reason, has decided not to give his wife a divorce, and sometimes even remarries in the process and does all kinds of terrible things, but she gets stuck, and she can't get remarried again until she gets the get, because otherwise, God forbid, the children will be born illicitly. And she has to wait, and she gets stuck. So in the good old days, the Gemara says, you call it the good old days, right? The Gemara says that they had a way to deal with a person like that. They would take a person and the Beis Din would beat him. The Beis Din would beat him until he would say, Rotza ani, I want to do it. And who wouldn't say, Rotza ani, I want to do it after being beaten? I mean, the first few times, maybe he would still hold out. But after a while, eventually, enough is enough. It's not worth it. I don't want to be beaten anymore, so where do I sign? So the question is, how do you have a situation like that? What does it help? So he said the words Rotze Ani. The Torah was not saying that he has to simply say the words I want to when in fact he doesn't want to. We know that people could often be forced to say or do things that they don't want to do against their will. And the Torah says it has to be according to his will. So what have you gained by beating him unto the point he says Rotze Ani? So the Gemara answers a phenomenal answer, a phenomenal insight. It says, because you know something? Really he wants to do. It's the moral thing to do. Man was made b'tselem Elokim. Man was made in the image of God. Therefore, man is inherently moral. Man inherently wants to do the right thing. So then what goes wrong? History seems to be a proof for just the opposite. So the Gemara says, the Torah says, the Chumash itself speaks about it. There's a Nachash. There's a Yitzhahara. When Adam ate from the Eitz Das Tova Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil against the will of God, he absorbed the evil inclination into him to the point that now it can hijack before it had to speak to Adam and convince him. We knew who he was. That's the Nachash who said that. Eat? I don't want to do that. He's saying that. Think about it. What does he mean by that? But there was no confusion as to who the Torah was and who was saying what. Once mankind absorbed the Torah into his being, it can hijack the brain. It can make you believe that the Yetzirah's request is your own request. It can confuse you emotionally. It can confuse you intellectually until you get to the point where literally you can think that you are the Yetzirah, or that his will is your will.